Good morning. Our sunrise reading will be chapter 8 this morning. Thinking in threes. Stepping out of family triangles. Recently, I visited my parents in Phoenix. I made this particular trip because my father, who prides himself on having made it to age 75 without even a sniffle, suddenly had a heart attack. It was a wonderful visit, but after I returned, I found myself feeling intense surges of anger toward my children. During the next few days, Matthew began waking up with headaches. Ben became increasingly rambunctious, and the boys fought constantly with each other. My two children became the prime target for my free-floating anger. As I talked my situation over with my friend Kay Kent, a sensitive expert on families, I began to make the connection between my anger toward my children and my visit home to my parents. The good time that I had had with my parents was a reminder not only of the geographical distance between us, but also of how much I would miss them when they were no longer around. On this particular visit, I could no longer deny their age. My father was tired, considerably slowed down, and easily out of breath. My mother, a spirited survivor of 2 cancers and a recent surgery, seemed her usual self. However, I was all too aware of her mortality. Kay suggested that I address this new awareness directly with my children and parents, and so I did. At the dinner table the following night, I apologized to my whole family for being such a grouch and a grump, and I explained to Matt and Ben that I was really feeling sad following my Phoenix trip because Grandma and Grandpa were getting old. Grandpa's heart attack was a reminder to me that they would not be around forever, and that one of them might soon die. That, I explained, is why I've been so angry. I also wrote a letter to my folks telling them how much I had enjoyed my visit and how, after my return, I had come in touch with my concerns about their aging and my sadness about my eventual future without them. What followed was quite dramatic. Both boys relaxed considerably, and the fighting diminished. Each asked questions about death and dying, and inquired for the first time about the specifics of their grandfather's heart attack and grandmother's cancer. I stopped feeling angry, and things returned to normal. The following week, I received a letter from my father, who gave only a perfunctory reply to my self-disclosure by suggesting I not dwell on the morbid side of life. In the same envelope, however, he enclosed a separate, lengthy letter to each of the boys explaining how the heart works and exactly what had happened in his own case. He concluded his letter to Matthew by directly addressing the subject of death. These letters, which were factual and warm, began the first correspondence between the two generations. Underground issues from one relationship or context invariably fuel our fires in another. When we are aware of this process, we can pay our apologies to the misplaced target of our anger and get back on course. I'm sorry I snapped at you, but I had a terrible day with my supervisor at work. I'm scared about my health, and I guess that's why I blew up at you. I've been angry at everybody all day, and then I remembered today is the anniversary of my brother's death. Sometimes, however, we are not aware that we are deterring strong feelings of anger from one person to another, or that underground anxiety from one situation is popping up as anger somewhere else. It is not simply that we displace a feeling, from one person to another. Rather, we reduce anxiety in one relationship by focusing on a third party who we unconsciously pull into the situation to lower the emotional intensity in the original pair. For example, if I had continued to direct my anger toward my misbehaving boys, who, in response, would have misbehaved more, I would have felt less directly anxious about the life cycle issue with my aging parents. In all likelihood, I would not have identified and spoken to the real emotional issue at all. This pattern is called a triangle, and triangles can take many forms. On a transient basis, triangles operate automatically and unconsciously in all human contexts, including our family, our work setting, and our friendship networks. But triangles can also become rigidly entrenched, blocking the growth of the individual in them and keeping us from identifying the actual sources of conflict in our relationships. The example below illustrates first a transient, benign triangle, and then a problematic, entrenched one. Excuse me. A triangle on the home front. Judy is a real estate agent, and Victor, her husband, is a salesman from the telephone company. On this particular day, Victor has a meeting after work and phones Judy to tell her that he will not be home until 7 o'clock. Judy has been with the children all afternoon and finds herself tense and tired by the time the evening meal rolls around. She cooks dinner for the children, who, sensing her mood, act out more than usual, which only puts a greater strain on her. She cleans up and watches the clock for Victor to come home. At 7:30, Victor walks through the front door. "I'm sorry I'm late," he says. "There was an accident on the road and I got stuck." It is an entirely reasonable excuse. Oh, but Judy is furious. Not, however, as she experiences it. Because of her own needs, she is not able to acknowledge that. "I am really upset," she says, with intense anger in her voice. "Johnny and Mary, the children, have been waiting all day for you to come home. Now it's almost their bedtime, and I'm especially worried about Johnny. You've hardly been with him this week. He has been missing you terribly. He is a son without a father." Okay, what is happening here? The question of Victor's parenting may be a worthwhile subject for discussion, but it is not the point. At this moment, Judy is using the children as a deflection from an important issue between her and Victor. Victor, too, may have his own motives for colluding with this deflection. Perhaps Judy feels that she has no right to be angry about Victor's late return. After all, the meeting was an important part of his job, and the traffic jam was not his doing. Her belief that her anger is not rational, legitimate, or mature may prevent her from being able to articulate it, even to herself. Or it may be that the issue is a loaded one. Victor's lateness may touch on Judy's long-buried anger regarding the extent to which Victor is pulling his weight in the marriage. If Judy and Victor have a flexible relationship, free from unmanageable levels of anxiety, the triangle will be temporary and of little consequence. When Judy cools off a bit, she will be able to share her feelings with Victor, including what a hard day she had and how angry and frustrated she felt when he did not return at 5 to offer her company and relief. But what if Judy does not feel safe speaking to Victor in her own voice? What if this couple is rigidly guarded against identifying the underground conflicts in their marriage? Over time, a triangle consisting of Judy, Victor, and one of the children may become rigidly entrenched. Judy may find herself constantly blowing up at one of the kids instead of at Victor. Or she may intensify her relationship with Mary or Johnny in a manner that will help keep things calm on the marital front. This can happen in any number of ways. Mother and Johnny may form an overly close relationship that will compensate for a distant marriage and help keep Father in an outside position in the family. Mother may complain to her daughter about her husband, rather than confining these issues to the marriage where they belong. Or one of the children may become a major focus for concern, perhaps through the development of an emotional or behavioral problem, thus drawing Judy's attention away from her own dissatisfaction in the marriage, and perhaps enabling Victor and Judy to experience a pseudo-closeness as parents attempting to care for their troubled child. The third leg of the triangle need not be a child. It could be Judy's mother, an in-law, or a person with whom Judy or Victor is having an affair. Triangles take on an endless variety of forms, but in each case, the intensity between Judy and a third party will be fueled by unaddressed issues in her marriage, and marital issues will become increasingly difficult to work on as the triangle becomes more entrenched. Of course, Judy's anger at her husband may be gaining steam from unaddressed issues with others, such as her own mother or father. People of both sexes and all ages participate in multiple interlocking triangles that may span several generations. But as we have seen, women often have a greater, exaggerated fear about rocking the boat in an important relationship with a man. Thus, we are likely to avoid a direct confrontation and instead deter our anger through a relationship with a less powerful person, such as a child or another woman. How might such a triangle operate at work? A triangle on the job. Melissa was a bright young woman who was appointed director of nursing in a small private hospital run almost exclusively by men. As it turned out, she was occupying a token position that afforded her little real authority. Month after month, Melissa sat in meetings where her contributions were ignored and where she felt increasingly powerless to influence institutional policy affecting the nursing discipline. Excuse me. Melissa's sense of gratitude for being among the chosen few, her dread of her own anger at male authorities, and her unconscious fear that greater personal clarity might lead to a confrontation that would lose her the approval of those in power, all combined to keep her from feeling angry and addressing issues directly where they belonged. Melissa's customary style was to behave differentially to high status males and to protect men in authority from the criticisms of other women. Perhaps this style played some part in her landing the director's position to begin with. Melissa